At this point, I've pretty much covered the entire production of The Thief and the Cobbler. I talked about how it all started, the years of struggle to find the money to actually work on it, the golden opportunity to finish it thanks to Roger Rabbit, and how it ultimately came out as an Aladdin ripoff as the result of the impatience of big corporations. So now with all that covered, there isn't much to talk about the production, right? Well, yes. Which is why this part will not be about the making of the feature. That we can agree, it is done. It's finished. Instead, this will be about something that is as important to look into in order to fully talk about the history of this movie. Williams' masterpiece may not have been complete, but it certainly resulted in having it the same impact as a masterpiece. This is the legacy of The Thief and the Cobbler.
During the time when both the Completion Bond Company and Miramax were messing with Richard Williams' vision in the 1990s, the work print that Williams created as the blueprint of the movie started to get passed around outside of the studio. While the ones released in theaters would be filled with inconsistent animation and musical numbers, animation fans and animators alike were sharing each other a bootleg version that contained that work print. Sure, the quality was completely subpar compared to what the big companies released, but at least it was the closest thing people could get to watch what Dick wanted to make for so many years. Plus, it even had all the original animation that Fred Calvert removed when he made his version. It would have been great if Dick could just release his work print to the public, but unfortunately, he couldn't. When he lost control of the movie, he also lost the rights to The Thief and the Cobbler. That got completely owned by Miramax. Legally, he couldn't just go back to make the film and release it the way he intended it to be viewed. Or could he? Maybe there's a loophole to all this. Let's see, well, like I said before, The Thief and the Cobbler was owned by Miramax, but at the same time, Miramax was owned by the Walt Disney Company. So that would mean that Disney owned the rights to The Thief and the Cobbler. As we all know, Disney also has the most renowned animation studio of all time. In fact, it was what built the entire company in the first place, and would be more than qualified to produce animation that would be up to Richard Williams standards. So, what if there would be a way for Dick to convince Disney Animation to restore The Thief and the Cobbler and bring it out to the world the way he wanted it to? It would be all legal since it would be under Disney, and he would have his chance to complete his masterpiece the way he envisioned it. It's an idea so insane that maybe, just maybe, it could actually work. And so in 2000 at the Annecy International Animation Film Festival, Williams talked with then chairman of Walt Disney Animation Studios, Roy E. Disney, and he actually agreed to create a director's cut of The Thief, which would involve taking the work print and finishing up the incomplete scenes, a mission that required the library research team to find the unused animation and pencil test. And when everything would be done, Disney would give the new version of The Thief a limited theatrical release and a special edition DVD. For the first time since its release, the movie got a second chance to become what Dick originally intended it to be. But that opportunity, however, did not last long. The early 2000s was a hard time for Disney Animation, as their movies were no longer the animated powerhouse like the ones from the 1990 decade. Sure, Lilo and Stitch was a big hit, but the others ended up becoming financial flops like Fantasia 2000, The Emperor's New Groove, and Disney's most infamous box office bomb, Treasure Planet. As it was a never-ending problem that the production had to usually face, money issues were involved. But the real killer of this second chance was when Roy E. Disney decided to quit the company on November of 2003 due to his relationship with then CEO Michael Eisner became real bad. At that point, that was when Williams officially called it quits. Since then, he decided to step out of the animation industry and become like what guys like Ken Harris and Art Babbitt was to him, a mentor to young animators. He would go around animation schools and teach people many of the principles of the medium, and in 2001, he took all his knowledge and teachings he learned from the old masters and put them onto the book, The Animator Survival Kit, which would later also become a 16-disc DVD set, an expanded edition of the book, and an app for the iPad.
On a side note, I would just like to add that this would go on to become one of the most important books in animation history, right next to The Illusion of Life by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston. It's pretty much impossible to think of an animation school right now that doesn't use this book in any way to teach students about making animation. If you aspire to have a career in animation, learn about animation, or are even just interested in animation, then you must have this book. I'm not trying to sell you this, like this isn't even sponsored by the Animator Survival Kit. I'm just saying that this is a requirement.
But back to what I was talking about, with his new role as a teacher, it gave Richard Williams a purpose to move forward and never look back or even speak about The Thief and the Cobbler ever again. But just because Dick wanted nothing to do with The Thief, that doesn't mean others weren't interested in the movie. Meet Garrett Gilchrist, an artist, filmmaker, writer, but most importantly in this case, one of Richard Williams' biggest fans. As such, he was highly fascinated by The Thief and the Cobbler and its story of how it was built up as the greatest animated film ever for decades, but ended up becoming the disaster that was known as Arabian Night. Since Dick wasn't gonna finish his job with the movie anymore, Gilchrist decided that he would do it for him. And so, in 2006, Garrett created a fan restoration of the movie called The Thief and the Cobbler, The Recobbled Cut. Like when Dick was making it, the project was funded out of Gilchrist's own pockets in order to get all the materials he can to create the highest quality of his restoration, including a 35mm film reel with rare footage of the movie, and even getting the support of many animators who have worked on the movie to let him borrow some of their animations. However, the recobbled cut wouldn't stay purely true to the original work print, as there are a few key differences to have it look more like a complete feature, including some extra music and animations from the Fred Calvert version. But even when his restoration was complete, he kept working on it to make it look better than the last and give the quality an upgrade. The first attempt was called Mark I, and Mark II would be done in the same year. In 2008, Mark III would come out with new footage from the film reel, and in 2013, Gilchrist would release Mark IV, which as of 2019 is the latest version of the recobbled cut. This one would have the movie be in high definition with more new footage from the 35mm film and new artwork made exclusively for this version. On top of the recobbled cut, Garrett also made a YouTube channel in 2008 called The Thief Archive, where it would be the unofficial place that would present videos of Williams' past works like commercials, specials, interviews, older documentaries, and footage from his movies like Raggedy Ann and Andy and The Thief. With both the recobbled cut and the YouTube channel, Gilchrist ended up playing a major part in keeping the relevancy of The Thief alive in the age of the internet, and even introducing the movie and its production history to a new generation of animation fans. So much so that the film even started to get credit for being the inspiration of a few projects. The movie's art style and Disney's Mulan were noted to be the key inspirations of the 2009 Academy Award-nominated animated feature, The Secret of Kells, and in 2012, Kevin Schreck created a documentary called Persistence of Vision, which told the history of the production of The Thief and the Cobbler through the perspective of the animators who worked on it with Williams. Speaking of which, as time would move on, he did try to completely separate his life from what was once his passion project, even refusing to give a helping hand for the recobbled cut and Persistence of Vision, but it actually did not last long. After releasing his 2010 animated short Circus Drawings, Dick eventually began to open up about his past experience with the project. But of course, he wouldn't do this alone. In 2013, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, with later the help of Asifa Hollywood, collaborated with Richard Williams in order to preserve his entire work on The Thief, which includes taking his work print and save it in their digital archives, along with saving many of the artwork and animation made for their feature there and in Disney's Animation Research Library. But that was not all. Between the end of 2013 and 2016, Williams would go to Los Angeles, London, Norway, and New York to a screening of his original work print, which was accompanied by an interview with Dick discussing about the movie for the first time in years. Since then, now that he made peace with his past and his once beloved feature, Williams would move on to work on a new animated project, based on the Greek comedy Lysistrata, one that promised that it would be an animated feature unlike anything the world had ever seen. Now I know what you're thinking. Oh no, here we go again. But don't worry, Dick learned his lesson and even made a backup plan. In 2015, he released the first 6 minutes of his film as an animated short called Prologue, which ended up receiving a nomination for a BAFTA and an Oscar. So if he would pass away right now, at least there is something that came out of his project. But now with the movie secured in the vaults of the Academy, Richard Williams can finally have a satisfying conclusion with his feature. It has now become something that is best described in the title of the screenings of his work print, which the events were called The Thief and the Cobbler, A Moment in Time.
In conclusion, The Thief and the Cobbler has often been referred to as the greatest animated film never made. A title that would project a feeling of loss, that its outcome would be viewed as a bad ending, that neither the film nor its creator came out a winner. But in reality, as time would move on, that notion would become less and less true. If anything, the fate of the movie ended up becoming bittersweet. Sure, Richard Williams never completed his passion project that he had worked on for decades, but he did succeed in having it leave a major impact in the field of animation, one that can even be compared to the works of Disney. The production history of The Thief would go on to become one of the most famous cautionary tales in animation history. How one can be a perfectionist to a fault, where it can cost someone years of their own time and millions of dollars, all to end up having it be taken away from them because they were not careful. On the other hand, though, even when the version of the big companies that they put out was rejected by the public, they would eventually discover Williams' original vision and be completely immersed and inspired by the innovative hand-drawn animation, like as if the movie was actually finished. In a way, the film did play a key part in revolutionizing the animation industry. It continuously helped Dick improve his craft so that he can also deliver some of the best animated moments, from the opening titles of The Charge of the Light Brigade and some of the Pink Panther movies, to winning his first Oscar for his adaptation of A Christmas Carol, to redefining the medium with Who Framed Roger Rabbit, to taking his entire knowledge on the subject and put them all in one of the most important books about animation. It may have taken a while, but it is now at the point that even Dick himself can finally look back and be happy about the positive impact that the film left in the industry. It may not be the completed masterpiece that Williams wanted it to be, but its legacy that's more than half a century old is one of animation's most legendary treasures. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see you later, dudes!
I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing. and that it was all started by a mouse.